Hi there, this is Dylis Guyan and welcome to the Inspired Selling Podcast, the place where business owners who sell to bigger businesses discover how to attract, convert and retain more of their ideal clients on a consistent basis without any of those nasty, sleazy, pushy, salesy tactics that I often see. And once again, I've got a fantastic guest for you today in Jay Allen. So let me just tell you a little bit about Jay. So since leaving the army after 12 years service, Jay has gone on to set up and grow 4 of his own businesses, working as a consultant with some of the most well-known names on the UK high street. He sits on the national board for both the National Print Management business and a registered charity, and won both national and international awards in 2015 with his published business book, Battlefield to Boardroom. So you can see we're going to have a really interesting interview today. And that book is about the 10 proven strategies to combat mediocrity. He also won an International Publishers Innovation Award for its insight and impact on modern business practice. And in January 2017, he also launched his latest book, The Road to Utopia, and How to Take the Shortcut. So really looking forward to talking to you and digging deeper into this, Jay. So tell us your backstory, just share that with us. How did you get to do what you're doing today? And give us a little bit of insight from your army days.
Sure. Good day to you and to your listeners. Thanks very much for having me on. That's quite an accolade. Whoever wrote that, I need to be able to thank them and offer them a $5 or something. That was quite interesting. Thank you.
Well, I just pulled that together, Jay, from the many places that I looked to be able to introduce you today.
Well, that's very kind of you. Thanks very much, Dylis. So a bit of background about me then. I went through school with enough GCSEs to be able to get to college and enough A-levels to get to university, but with no real consideration or real drive with regards to what I was going to do at the end of it. I was one of those people that still believed that, well, if you stay in education and you get a degree, then more jobs or more doors will be opened to you. So I qualified. I managed to get a first, and I qualified in psychology and human behaviour. I've always been fascinated by humans and the things that we do. And I never expected it to lead me to where it's got to today. But the intent, the expectation was to be able to go into social services and to work with kids that have perhaps fallen off the straight and narrow and try and give them a little bit of a hint, try and work with the gang kid culture and try and point them back from a road of self-destruction onto something a little bit more productive for themselves and society. And I did that for the first 7 months of my salaried career. Having got a first, I was offered 2 or 3 different appointments and opted for one in the centre of Nottingham in Nottinghamshire, which is close to where I was born and grew up. And I did it for 7 months. However, I very quickly realised that there was a lot of red tape and bureaucracy, which in actual fact prevented you from actually doing any real impactful change, because it was a multi-service department and you had to hand this bit over to them and this bit over to them and this bit over to the others, and realistically you ended up being a pen pusher. And I knew full well that I was going to get particularly frustrated in that career if I stayed in it. Meanwhile, all of my friends who hadn't gone to college or uni had left schools to get a job. I'd seen the big advert on the TV, the army needs you, ready to go to the Falklands War. So as I was getting disillusioned with being a psychiatrist, they were coming back from the Falklands with stories and cash and girlfriends. And all of that sounded a lot more interesting than pushing pence for the local social services department. And without further ado, I resigned from my job on the Thursday. I went into the Army Careers Office on the Friday and said, here's a job. And 2 weeks on the following Saturday, I was in basic training and learning to become a paramedic in the British Army.
Wow.
I spent 14 years in the Army, 12 years in active service, a year of training, and then a year at the end, towards the end, in rehabilitation. And I loved my job in the army. I was fortunate enough to have travelled to all the sexy places in the world, like the first Gulf War and Northern Ireland and Bosnia and Kosovo and East Timor and Sierra Leone, all the wonderful, fabulous places that you don't tend to see on Thompson's.
Indeed.
Yeah, absolutely. Until such a time, and I'd become a career soldier. Really, I was happy to be able to do what I was doing. I'd risen through the ranks a few times and been able to get to some power of privilege and opportunity, and ran a team. Pretty much picked my own hours within reason. The colonel was very, very supportive and said, "I don't mind what time you start work in the morning, as long as you understand that I start work at 7:30 and I like my coffee hot."
Brilliant.
But I worked for an exceptional maverick of a colonel who went on to become a 4-star general before he retired. Travelled the world a few times, enjoyed my career, it was going exceptionally well, until such a time as I had an accident in the Second Gulf War. And rather than being a medic looking after everybody else, I was the one that was shouting, "Medic!" and hoping that someone came to my aid.
So when you came out of the army, how was that? How did you feel? And in terms of how you were going to move forward with any kind of career? I mean, I don't know how bad you were, your condition was, how badly hurt you were, but was that a difficult time for you?
Massively, massively. I spent 14 months in hospital during my recovery period, and I knew from day one that I was never going to be able to return to uniform in the service. So I knew I'd got during my rehabilitation phase, I knew full well that I needed to prepare myself for this thing called civvy street or getting a proper job. I had no anticipation at the time that barbed wire around every barracks was actually to keep us in as opposed to keep you out. I didn't realise that barbed wire acted as so much protection and privilege for what we had inside that, coming out to the civvy street and finding out that you got to, the money that comes into your bank account at the end of the month isn't all yours. That was a new experience because the army are very good at taking everything off you before you receive it, including your rent and your bills and pretty much everything that needs to be taken care of is done. And whatever's in your bank account, whatever they pay you is yours. And then you come to Civvy Street and you earn a salary and then you go, hang on a minute, I've only got about 20% left to spend for myself. Everything else is already taken care of. So that was interesting. But I think...
Your own business then, Jay?
Well, I think the biggest problem that I initially suffered when I first left the army, people's perceptions to me as a soldier. Now, don't get me wrong. I mean, I finished in full uniform and entered Civvy Street back in 2003, long before PTSD was fashionable. But to be able to admit to any HR professional, and I went for 153 interviews in the 10 months after I'd left. And they always ask the same question. You've got a great CV, you've got a couple of degrees, you've held a management position, you understand what a P&L balance sheet is. You're a good asset to the team, other than the fact that this CV says that you've not been in employment for the last 2 years. Where have you been? And the moment you say, well, I've spent pretty much 18 months in and out of hospital and rehabilitation, but everything's cool now, all of a sudden you go from being a good catch to a long-term sickness absence risk. And there were 3 or 4 occasions where the HR manager at interview said, listen, we'd love to employ you, but we're fearful that we might take you on and you end up spending some more time in hospital and there's not getting any benefit from you. So we'd like you to go away and get a job and prove that you can hold down a job, but then come back and work for us in a year's time because we'd love to have you. And the problem was the fact that when everyone was saying the same thing to you, then, very quickly, the mortgage is being paid by the redundancy money we got from the service, and very quickly one outweighs the other. And I realised I simply just needed to get a job. And after 153 failed interviews, if nobody else will take you on, then the simple answer is you take yourself on. If you've become unemployable, then the simple fact is employ yourself. And I set up in business in 2005.
Yeah. And who are you working with? Just tell us about what you actually do now.
So since 2005, we've gone on to grow 4 businesses. I've taken 3 businesses from 0 staff to 22 staff. I've exited twice. I exited in 2011 and again in 2013. And now we tend to work with business owners who are looking to significantly grow their business. I'm not interested in business owners that still talk about being able to create a part-time job for themselves, or wants to be able to create self-employment where they continually want to spend all of their life working in the job. I'm far more interested in working with people that want to be able to scale the business to such a degree that the business starts to give them an income, whether they're in it or not, and it can make them redundant. Our most success to date is being able to help a client to be able to employ 1 new person every 4 months for 4.5 years, and to grow so significantly that they needed the additional staff to do so.
Brilliant. So tell us then, what did you bring with you in terms of strategies and techniques from your army days that you have implemented into your businesses and into the businesses of your clients?
There's 2 predominant things that we brought from the military, the rest of which I've pretty much been from my psychology days or from simply applying things myself and seeing if they work. But the 2 fundamental things. Okay, let's go for 3. Let's be generous. First of all, the first day that I got into uniform and into my regiment, I'd spent a year in training and learning how to become a soldier, but the first day that I was deployable as a soldier, I was fortunate enough to have been taken into the regimental sergeant major's office, a gentleman called Mick Germain, who was the most influential person in my military career. And he said, "Alan, let me tell you 2 things, and if you remember both of them, your career will go well. And if you forget either of them, you'll probably stop here and now." And I thought, well, this is important, I'll write it down. And the first thing he said is, the army is one of the best in the world at being able to manage big things. So if there's something that's big going on, and let's face it, we do get involved in some big things from time to time, but if there's big things going on, go with it and understand how you can help oil the wheels and keep the motion going. Never, ever, ever say, "Yeah, but sir," because we haven't got time for "but sirs." We need to be on board. So whenever something big's happening, make sure that you and anyone you're responsible for is completely and 100% on the bus, facing forward, ready to go. I went, "Yeah, we could do that." He said, "Alan, there is a caveat to this. If there's small stuff going on, if there's stuff going on that doesn't involve the army or the regiment or the corps, if there's smaller stuff that only needs a few people to deal with, don't tell us about it, because we don't really care that much about small stuff. The simple fact is, we're here to deal with big stuff, and it's your job to deal with small stuff. Don't bring us problems, just let us know that it's been dealt with in order that we can concentrate on the big stuff." And that was huge, both in the military days and certainly ever since I've worked in Civvy Street. I was fortunate enough to have lunch with Warren Buffett in 2015. Now, I need to be honest and sincere about this and say there was 999 other people at the same lunch. But I was there, and Warren Buffett was the speaker.
Really impressed there. I'm still impressed.
But Warren Buffett was one of the first people that really, really influenced me as a business owner, when he said, "I think big, and most other people..."
Say that again, Jay.
He simply said, "I think big, and most other business owners simply think too small. And as a result, it automatically gives me the advantage." So if there's any advice I'd give to any business owner from that segment of my life, it would simply be stop thinking small, because it's far, far easier to think small and be successful than it is to think big and not be quite as big as you at first thought you could become capable of. But you've got to have far bigger thoughts if you want to have far bigger actions and far bigger impact.
And often, I was just going to say, often the case is that it's not much harder to do the big things as it is to do the smaller things.
I've got to be honest with you, I often say to people, what's the difference? What's the gap between where you are right now and where you want to be in 12 months' time? What's the size of the gap? And ironically, it's a lot easier to be able to put something big and impactful to fill a big gap than it is to try and think intrinsically small to be able to significantly cover a little gap. So that was the first thing I got from Mick Germain is think bigger thoughts if you want to have bigger impact and bigger pockets. The other thing I took from him is it's far better to ask for forgiveness than permission.
Do you know what? I'm laughing because my husband was in the Marines for 25 years. And that's something that he often says.
It must be a tri-service thing, but believe you me, it's so true.
Yeah.
You see, if you know the rules, then you know which ones that you have to apply. But you also know the ones that, although are written, probably don't really apply unless they have to. And the simple fact is that no one wants a whinger or a moaner. No one wants someone that says, I'll have a steering committee. We'll have a consensus. People just want results. And whilst everybody else is having this steering committee, we're just bloody well getting on with it. And ironically, doing a full day's work, getting up early, having a list of things that you will do today and you will not finish until the list is complete, probably increased our turnover. Well, I know how much it increased our turnover because the fourth business I launched, called My True North, the one that we're in as we speak today, we launched that on the 13th of May, and by the 6th of June, I was employing my first member of staff, and by the 23rd of June, we were employing our second member of staff, because we knew that turn up early, do a full day's work, give permission to people for ones to make decisions and to welcome errors into the business so you can learn from them is the quickest way that you can employ people that want to work for a successful business as opposed to people that want to work for a job.
Yeah. So just give us a quick example then, Jay, of for our business owners who are the majority of the audience here at Inspired Selling. Give me an example of thinking big. And I get what you're saying about write your list, work through it and so on. But it's about, if you're thinking bigger, the things on the list that you're going to do are going to be different. So give us an example. Okay,
so very briefly, and we'll do a wide scale thing and then we'll narrow it down just to be able to help everybody on who's listening today.
Okay.
First of all, we need to understand that whenever you chase money, it will always evade you. You see, money enjoys the game chase. And whenever you're prepared to play the game and chase the next big paycheck or chase the next contract, it will always play chase and allow you to evade it so you carry on playing. It's a game of cat and mouse. And yet the moment you stop chasing the cash and start chasing impact, cash gets bored and starts to follow you and says, will you come and play with me again? So I compare any business to dropping a pebble into a pond. First of all, the pebble is you. And the first and most important person in any business is the business owner or business leader. Because without clear direction from a person or persons, if it's a partnership, the business just goes round and round in circles and doesn't get anywhere. So first of all, we have to have an impact and we have to be clear about who we are and what we want to achieve. Yeah. Secondly, as we drop the pebble into the water, the first ripple, that's our immediate family, because ironically, the most significant priority in anybody's life is to be able to provide for them and the family. So we have to ensure that our business is geared to be able to reward good behaviour in a means that satisfies the egos and requirements of everyone within the business. We have to be a profit-first business in order to be able to look after the most valuable asset in any business, which is its staff. Beyond that, the next ripple is our local community or our family and friends, our wider circle of influence. What impact can we have in our local community? What can we do to not necessarily give back, but what sort of an impact can we have on the local community itself to become a person of influence? Because it's the influence where the cash will follow. Beyond that, it's a case of, well, can we have an impact on our industry or the sector in which we're in? And eventually, once we've been able to get to sector-specific guru status, we can start to look humanity and understand as to what can we do to either change our local humanity or impact humanity, or support businesses that are doing so. Because ironically, if you look at the UN 2030 agreement with regards to the 17 global problems that are being addressed at present, they estimate that there is $176 trillion of aid required between now and 2030 to be able to support the 17 biggest problems that the world faces. And your question should be, is what impact am I having on those 17 issues? Because ironically, I wouldn't mind a 0.00001% of the $176 trillion, as opposed to thinking about where does my salary come from for next week.
Yeah. So what you're talking about here really is your mindset and your thinking right at the beginning, right at the outset.
Absolutely. I can assure you that 80% of business is from here before we do here. We have to have absolute clarity on exactly what it is that we want to achieve and when we want to achieve it. You will never achieve anything worthwhile without a target and a deadline. And then every aspect of the business has to be geared towards, are we impacting that target and that deadline? And the best example I can give of this is one of our clients, Adam, who we worked with over the last 3.5 years. Now, when Adam first came to us, he already had a business. He had a training business in the northwest of England. He was doing particularly well. He also owned a small commercial cleaning business. He had 2 businesses by his 30th birthday. And he was doing okay for himself. But he had some really, really big personal ambitions about what he wanted to achieve for him and his family. And when we looked at how to scale both of his businesses, we established that regardless of how much he scaled them, he was never going to be able to achieve the level of income he wanted for the lifestyle he wanted to lead in the time frame that he wanted to lead it in. We had to do something significantly different if we were going to be able to give him the income he wanted in the time frame, a target and a deadline. And what we established was we needed to sell his business and start again. His business, the model that he was in, wasn't scalable enough in the time frame in order to get to where he wants to be. So he sold both businesses, and he used the money from the sales to be able to start investing in a brand new business. And the new business was specifically designed to be able to create maximum personal wealth in the minimum amount of time. And every single aspect of the business, as it grew and grew and grew over the 3 years and 7 months that he owned it, was geared towards, is this going to generate this amount of income by this date? And he took a £25,000 investment into a startup business and converted it into an £8.4 million sale in 3 years and 4 months' time.
Blimey. So
he retired on his 35th birthday.
Brilliant. What were those key elements then? Let's share some of the three, the top strategies that people can take away and implement.
No trouble at all. Well, first of all, I need to share with you a triangle. Now, that's one triangle, and that's another triangle. And the difference is huge. You see, first of all, to be able to go from a growth business to a scale business, we need to understand the impact that these 3 points have on our business. First of all, people, process, systems. We have to have the people, the processes, and the systems in place that work collectively to be able to help the business to grow. That's an arrow pointing upwards to be able to help the business grow and grow and grow. We've got to be able to have the people and the right people doing the right things at the right time in order to contribute to growth. Not towards generating an income for themselves. Every action in a business has to be towards, does this make us achieve the goals that we've set quicker or higher goals within the same time frame? And we must have 360-degree feedback in order to be able to question anybody at any time to say, what are you doing right now and how does that contribute to our goals? Because we're all in it to do.
This is absolute clarity of knowing
absolute clarity
and when.
A target and a deadline, and it has to be an audaciously big target. We call them BFAGs, big, fat, hairy, audacious goals. It's an army thing. But we call them, what is the BFAG for this year and what's the BFAG for forever? What's the big goals that we're aiming for? And how is your actions right now contributing to those goals? And if you can't justify it easily within a sentence or two, then the chances are you're trying to quantify it, which is probably not making enough money. So people, process and system. However, businesses that failed, and my last university degree, I'm currently being audited by Preston University to establish as to whether my study is worthy of a doctorate or not at the moment. But my last area of study for the last 3.5 years has been looking at 153 businesses that failed. I've looked at 153 high street businesses that are no more. The most recent one before this recording was Toys R Us. I studied Toys R Us for quite some time to find out as to why a business that was on every high street subsequently disappeared. And I wanted to know why. Because you see, there is a multitude of information that we can find all the time, all the way over the internet. There's so much information out there about how businesses succeed and the overnight success story. And yet the simple fact is you will learn so much more from a failure than you ever will from a success. Because it's only when you fail that you learn to say, what do I need to do differently so I don't fail next time? Whatever the going's good, you never stop and say, well, why is that then? You just enjoy the ride. And it isn't until the ride's over that you wonder as to what it is that I need to do to make it go again.
And I've shared this quite a number of times on different podcasts, but my thing that I do is after everything, no matter what the outcome, what went well, what didn't go well, what do I need to do differently? Because it's
massively
to keep doing the same thing over and over again.
And ironically, it comes back to my military days. Doesn't matter what you do, before you go out on a patrol in the morning, you check yourself off, you check everybody else off to be able to make sure that you're ready for the day's activities, regardless of whatever life throws at you. And the moment there is a problem, you all pull together, you fix the problem, and let's face it, the British Army is still considered as the most professional fighting force in the world. And the moment you get to the completion, wherever and whatever that is, you get back behind into some safe area, you check yourself back off again, you check everybody else off again, and you make sure that you're capable of doing the next day's work. So a full day's work and a clear plan. However, the triangle. The big problem, the problem I found across 153 failed businesses in the UK was where system and processes drove people. And it's where businesses had invested so much money in implementing a Lean Sigma program or some new software that had been brought in that everyone now has to, POS software that everyone now has to deal with. And where the systems and the processes were the key driving influence, and people were prevented from thinking from themselves and simply told to follow the system. Ironically, people stopped thinking. And the problem with that is that when there are problems in the business, they're not flagged by the people. They're not identified. They all go into silos and they go into the "that's not my job" mentality. And as a result, they watch it as it fails. And it's as simple as that. It's got to be that the most expensive thing that you will either ever do well or ever do badly is employ staff. Because in any business, the highest bill that you're ever going to pay is the monthly salary bill. If you invest in staff, if you give them the freedoms to be able to grow and develop, if you enable them to be able to show them a career ladder within your small business that helps them understand that in order to be able to get promoted, I've got to, one, help somebody else become better at the job than I'm currently doing than I am at present, in order for me to move on into an area of responsibility to supervise them doing. We've got to be able to give career help and support to our small businesses and understand the mentality of growth and scale. Because if we get it right, they will become your greatest asset. I can assure you full well that employing someone should be a 6 to 8 week decision, not a 6 to 9 month decision. The amount of times I hear people that say, I'd love to be able to take on another member of staff, I just can't afford it right now. Well, the simple fact is you can't afford not to. Because, you know, whenever I take somebody on, and we took 3 members of staff on last year, and whenever I take anybody on, I'll say to them, I will give you the freedom to do whatever it is that you feel the need to do in the first 3 weeks of employment. Every folder is available for you to be able to view. Every member of staff is available for you to talk to. I will come to work whenever you want to come to work, and I will support you in your learning for 3 weeks. And in week 4, it's called test week. And you've got to show me what you've learned and what you're capable of delivering to this business. And if you can't generate sufficient to be able to pay your income, then thanks very much, it's been a great work experience. If you can generate more than you would like to earn as an income, that's great and you can stay on. And the more you generate, the more I will pay you. None of my staff have anything like a fixed term salary. When I sold my last business, my sales manager, when he started with me, he was on a basic salary, and in those days, I think minimum salary was about £5.70 an hour. I think it was. It's about £9 now or something. But in those days, I think the basic salary was about £5.76 an hour. I think it was, and his salary was £6 an hour, just over minimum wage. But we set him some very, very, very significant targets and said, if you hit these targets, this is the bonus structure that will pay you. When I sold that business, there were 22 members of staff. He was head of sales, and his PAYE, his salary, remained at £6 an hour. He just happens to earn about £70,000 a year in bonuses. And he didn't give a damn about his salary because he knew that it was all about the package and what he contributed, and he would get a percentage of whatever it was that he generated. Uncapped earnings potential. We've got to be able to invite all of the people on our bus to be willing at some stage to drive the bus and to work collectively to be able to get it to a further destination than simply the next bus.
Yeah. And do you know what I love? There's 2 things that I picked loads out here, but working collectively is so important, rather than what you were alluding to before about going around like individual silos. It's the strength of the team. And this is a big military thing as well, isn't it? The strength of the team. It really is one for all and all for one.
Oh, very much so. I mean, I remember the first time going to Northern Ireland, whilst Northern Ireland was still, before the peace treaty, whilst there was still a fair amount of trouble and strife in Ireland, and preparing for the first time ever to go out on a foot patrol. And it was quite a daunting experience because, as far as I'm concerned, these are my people. This is my language, this is my country that we're in, and carrying live ammunition for the first time outside of basic training. This is now quite a daunting reality. And I recall my corporal, the head of section that was going to take us out, and he simply said, Alan, I want you to be, and don't get me wrong, when I was first there, as a private soldier, the lowest of the low, you know, you look up at anyone and they're a god compared to the rank that you hold. And I remember him said to me, his name was Dwayne, and he said to me, when you walk out through those barracks and you're on the streets, the man in front of you is your God. And without hesitation or consideration, if necessary, you will die to protect your God. And the only consolations to knowing that is that there's somebody behind you thinking exactly the same thing.
Yeah, yeah. And my husband's told me many, many stories. He was in Ireland as well, in fact. But he's told me many stories about, how his men were his men. They were like, he would have died for them and they would have died for him.
Absolutely.
And but you have to create that. That just doesn't happen. So
No.
just be the leader who creates that sort of environment where people feel that they feel considerate and supportive and caring. If we're talking about in the business world, and funny enough, and I know a number of people who will refer to my husband as the legend. They say,
Yeah.
Keith Guyan, I remember him.
Very much so. And I'll give you a quick example from one of the chapters within the book Battlefield to Boardroom. Just before the first Gulf War, there were 226,000 American troops deployed in and around Iraq. And just put that into context. Almost 250,000 soldiers deployed, ready to be able to fell Saddam and take over the protection of the Iraqi people. And 72 hours before the political decision was made to be able to go and invade Iraq, it was determined that an 8,200 British spearhead would lead the invasion, followed by 226,000 American soldiers. And the simple fact is, whilst I've got nothing against Americans, I'm sure that there are many out there that are possibly listening to this and thinking I'm about to become quite racist, and I assure you I'm not. Some of my greatest and longest term friends are Americans. But the American philosophy is, I swear allegiance to do as I'm told and not think for myself. And the British, certainly the British soldiers, are taught this is the outcome we need to achieve, and these are the parameters that you're allowed to work within. And inside those parameters, make it happen.
Oh, fantastic. On that note, Jay, I'm going to suggest that everyone gets your book, Battlefield to Boardroom, and the subsequent book, The Road to Utopia. I could talk to you all day. Maybe you could come back and we could have another interview and take a deeper dive. But just talking to you has inspired me. And I'm sure if I spoke to some of your employees, they would say this is a great place to work. And if they think it's a great place, then you've got that attraction thing going on when people go, I will actually want to work there.
There's one quick measure you know when you've made it with staff. Last year, 3 members of my staff, completely independently of me or anything else, opted to go on holidays together because they didn't want to spend 2 weeks apart.
Wow. Well, that is testament to a great leader, because you have to create the environment. And I say this over and over again. I'm totally inspired, Jay. So if anyone wants to get in touch with you, how might they do that?
Thanks very much. The best things to do is to either drop an email to iwantto@addazero.co.uk. Alternatively, if they'd like to go onto the website or on social media and find us at My True North UK or mytruenorth.biz, B-I-Z. Brilliant.
Jay, thank you so much. This has been an absolute pleasure, and I look forward to speaking to you again soon.
Thanks very much for having me.
Oh gosh, it's been a pleasure. Bye for now. What an excellent interview that was. I can't wait actually to interview him again. So if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe to my podcast. And also, if you would like to interact with me more on a daily basis, please come and join me in my Facebook group, Inspired Selling. Now, this is specifically for business owners who are selling to other businesses and want to learn more of the strategies and techniques and so on for getting more clients. And you can ask questions, you can share your insights, you can collaborate, but more importantly in that group, you can become known for what you do. So pop over to Facebook, look for Inspired Selling and come and join us. It would be a delight to have you there. So until the next time, be an inspired seller. Bye for now.